So those are there for you. How to save Twine games. If you forget, just come here. I made a picture book that will explain how to do it so that everything is cool when you try to submit it. I also include this because I also frequently forget how to actually save games. Uh, so there it is. So let's come back here. So we're at Twine. If you want to open Twine and follow along, do so. If not, that's also fine. Oh, I also lost the story. So click here, start a new story. Our story is actually, hold on, because I have a name. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the assignment for today as a means for doing the lecture today about agency. The assignment is that you will take a fable, parable, or urban legend. You want something very small. So I'd actually previously chosen this one because it's a page. It's an Aesop fable, The Goose and the Golden Egg. I'm guessing most of you have heard of this already, right? And this is about the length you want to go for. I am not looking for an original piece. I'm very specifically not looking for an original piece because that's not what we're going for in this assignment. I want you to think about agency. I want you to think about taking an existing story and creating an experience for the player. And that's what we're practicing in this. Also, this is a part of your participation credit. So use that to gauge how much time you should be spending on this. The assignment, or over in the links, when I said there was one, The Boy Who Cried Wolf, that I created as a sample for previous class, that took me 2 hours. I've also used Twine a lot, but let's say if you are spending more than like 4 to 5 hours on this, you're doing it wrong. This is just practice. Okay, so I'm going to do The Goose and the Golden Egg. Why do I keep wanting to type good? I don't know. Now we have a story. So just as a reference, when you look at the links to get help in Twine, these are called passages, and it says untitled passage. Passage is what I mean when I say boxes. I am just such in the habit of saying boxes that when I typed up that assignment, I couldn't remember what they were actually called. All right, so I am going to, let's see. I wish I could catch both of my monitors on stream. That would make me so much happier. So for this story, you can copy some of the text. Again, because I'm not looking for original piece, because this is about practicing, creating an experience. Feel free to do that. Obviously, you can't copy the whole thing because do not give me a click-through. Okay? Most of your boxes have to have choices. Did I write that in here? No, but I did say you will have to modify the story you choose in order to allow for player agency. If you just copy your story through And if clicking is essentially the same as turning pages, I'm not giving you credit. All right, but you can copy and paste chunks. So let's say, ooh, this is super short. Do we want to add something to the beginning? Like, how did this countryman get this goose? Let's send him to the market. He stole the goose. Okay. Let's put those together. He stole it from the market. Uh, um, so I'm going to call this the market. Just as a reminder, when you put these passage titles up here, the player does not see that. That's just for you to help you keep track. Ooh, I like that. He steals from the rich. Okay, so let's go here. And also remember, if you erase this, um, you will get some information here on how to work, right? So it's reminding you of the square brackets. Okay. Also, let's give this guy a name. I don't want to keep saying the countryman. That's ugh, a mouthful. There once was a, what do they call him? They call him a countryman? That word seems weird to me. I feel like I want to say like peasant or something, but then that's such a loaded word. I'm gonna say poor man from the country, right? Because the poor is stealing from the rich is what we're going for. Still waiting on a name for my poor man here. Named Philip? That's an interesting name. I have never seen that name before. Is that two L's? I wonder if I can make this chat bigger. Yes. There we go. Wow, that's so much easier. Why didn't I do that earlier? All right. Uh, there was a poor man from the country named Philip. One day he went to market to try and sell some potatoes. He had grown. I think I have potatoes on the brain because I recently just watched a movie about the potato famine in Ireland. All right. One day. The thing about doing this live, you get to see all the typos. One day he went to market to try and sell some potatoes. He had grown. Wow. He was there. He saw the scraggliest looking goose sitting at the booth of the wealthiest merchant in town. I like the idea of this goose being like the ugly duckling. Having a goose would be uh, No, let's say it this way. Philip loves eggs and always wished he could own his own goose. This one here didn't look. Wouldn't miss. So I have this weird thing when I'm writing and texting that I drop negatives. Uh, so you can imagine this has led to some both hilarious and unfortunate conversations. All right, so we want to put a choice in here right away. And why do I want to put a choice in here right away? So we know the story, right? Even if you didn't know it before, here it is. To really get going with the story, we need him to get the goose, whether he's going to buy it, steal it, whatever, right? And in chat here, Viking Lord wants us to steal it. Trans wants us to specifically steal it from Rich. So we kind of made it being stolen from a rich person. The fact that the goose belongs to a rich person right now is not really an option. But we still want to put some choices in here because, like I said, we're not writing a story here. That's a different type of experience. We need to have some player agency. So what choices could we put here? I'll start typing. The obvious one is going to be that he steals the goose, right? That's what you guys already put forward. But then you're going to have to give me something else because that can't be the only option. Hagel, yep. So I had put in barter. My apologies. I got impatient there. Oops. And started typing in things while I was waiting for responses. I'm going to say this out loud actually just to remind myself, not y'all, but there is usually about a 30-second delay when I'm streaming. I really got to remember to slow my roll and wait for answers. Okay, so right now we have, so Billup decided to steal the goose, so Billup decided to barter for the goose. Um, uh, do we not necessarily need to create stories if we are branching from the original? So, if I understand your question correctly, the answer is kind of. So you are going to have to do some original writing because you're branching from the original, but what I don't want is a fully original piece. Um, all right. So my third option here, and we could maybe have more than three. I'm starting with but instead of so, um, because I don't want the only option here to be that Billup is going after the goose. Um, right. So what else can we say here? I want the player to feel like they have a choice here. This will lead to higher engagement for the player. While you're designing your final games, this is very important. This is also something that's very hard, and I do understand that, right? So when I'm looking through, so here's the thing. With these assignments, I get these proposals. The proposals are always great. Like, I don't think I've ever actually had anyone give me a bad proposal ever, right? Like, we are all gamers. We all have, those ideas of these games we wish we could make, right? And they're all cool. Um, the problem is that we all have these ideas for games that we want to make because we envision them going in a certain way. We envision stories going in a certain way and players interacting them in a certain way. What we really need to remember is that players will react to things in very unexpected ways, right? And we have to allow for that. You have to allow the player to explore different possibilities so that they can have a a personal experience with what you're designing. Um, so I'm going to say here, since no one's talking to me in chat, uh, I'm going to get real judgy here, but Billup was an honorable man. Actually, no, let's not get judgy. Because you could also say barter, and that's not like a dishonorable thing like stealing is. But Billup was. How about, but Billup knew he had nothing the merchant would want to trade, but Billup knew. Let's just say he has no self-esteem. We'll just say Billup knew he could never own such a luxury. Why do I always want to hit shift there? How does this look? So now we got three. So back to the technical aspects of Twine. This is how it looks when you do the square brackets. It automatically makes the next level of the choices. And when you see the arrow that comes down, you know that you set it up right, and so it worked. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. This is just me being real picky. I am very particular about the way my games look in the background. There we go. All right, so I'm going to start with this one. But Billup knew he could never own such a luxury. Um, and I'm going to do something that I am going to not recommend you do very often. If you do it once, it's fine. But Philip knew he could never own such a luxury. And so he turned his back toward the goose so as to not be envious. He finished selling his handful of potatoes. I really need some spell check in this thing. Oh my gosh. Um, he finished selling his handful of potatoes and went home a few copper richer than before. Uh, okay. What am I doing here? And why did I say you should not do this more than once? Think about agency. Think about what I require for a Twine assignment. And what is this passage right here? This is ending the game, Citrus Space. Absolutely. It is an early ending. Um, so here's why. Actually, no, before I explain, let me see if you guys can explain it to me. Why do I say be careful with this slash do this very sparingly? What's the problem with an early ending? Yes, it's not satisfying. There's not much to experience. Uh, this would be if somebody chose that, the game would be over in probably less than a full minute. That that is what I was looking for. I realize I'm pointing at chat, which is meaningless if you're watching the camera. If you do this a lot, then the story is essentially linear and it's dissatisfying to the players. Right. So I went back here so that you could see under the hood. And one of the things I love about Twine, whether I am building something in Twine or using it to visualize something else, is because it's good at visualizing other things. So if you look here, um, and it looks like there are three choices, but there's really not. This becomes a early ending. It ends the game, so it's basically a non-choice if you actually want to play the game. Um, and so what you really have here is two choices. Now, I have seen a lot of Twine games where you'll get this once, where there's a very quick dead end, and that's okay. If you do this quick end off of every single choice, then it becomes a problem. Then you do have, as Cytheric said, you have a story that is essentially linear. You have a story that is all false choices. Now we don't have a game. Now we do not have any agency. And you might as well just write a story or write a book. Um, Again, not bashing that. I love to read. Uh, but if I sit down to some interactive fiction, then that's obviously not the experience I'm looking for. All right, so we're going to do this once and put it out there. And now we're going to go to, and I'm just putting it up there because get it out of the way. So let's go for, so Billup decided to barter for the goose. Okay, so there's a couple of things I want to talk about. Oh, actually not here. It'll be the next box. So I'm going to set it up differently this time where I'm going to put the choices within um, the uh, passage. I also realize that I'm doing way too much in the market and I was really hoping to get a lot further into the story that was actually here. Um, he could wait until another day. Okay, so so now coming off of this, I'm gonna come back and go through a couple of options here. So Billup makes this decision for trying to barter for the goose here. Um, and there's two obvious ways that both of these can go, right? And that is that the merchant says yes, the merchant says no. Now, on the one hand, you could also say this is kind of a quick ending if at any point the merchant says no. Um, but there's a couple of different ways that that can be dealt with, right? Um, and the reason I say it that way is because I would not recommend saying whatever Billup decides, the merchant's going to go with it, right? Because then otherwise this choice didn't matter, right? If the end is Billup's getting the goose no matter what, then the choice doesn't matter. And that is also just as bad as having something like this, because then the story again becomes linear. Your choices end up not mattering. Yeah, like you have these games where if it's too linear, then it feels like you don't have choice. Like if I look at this one and I think you can see, wait, I just pointed with my finger. No, I should use the mouse. So I have no choices for the first four passages, and then I make a few choices, but even after that one initial choice, they all then come together into this circular path. Um, and then ends with no story, with no choices whatsoever. There's no agency. If I do this, I'm reading a story. Um, Now compare that to something like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs here, and looking at this, I can't even tell where it ends. This I'm going to expect to open up and be like, wow, okay, what's going to happen? I don't know. Am I going to, I mean, I vaguely know the story of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but um, I'm going to open this game and think I have no idea where it ends, even though I know the story it's based on. There are ways, so a lot of this is about aesthetic. This is about what the player is feeling, right? And there are also ways that you would not be able to tell by looking at the bubbles. Um, there are ways that you can create very meaningful choices, um, even if they don't ultimately matter to the ending. Um, Now, this is something you wouldn't be able to see in this visualization, right? So let's go back to da, 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 da. Actually, let's go back to Mothman since I already messed that up completely anyways. So within this, and I haven't played this since it was downloaded 2 years ago. Um, Depending on the story, each of these may actually be a very emotional choice. Um, Even if there is only one ending. And what I'm thinking of specifically uh, is, and if we had more time, I would actually assign it, is I'm thinking about The Witcher 1. I had warned all of you that you were going to get a lot of Witcher stories because I'm playing through the whole thing right now. And in Witcher 1, you get to this point where there's two women, Shani and Triss. And how this would look here, if I was mapping it out, is you have a bunch of story beforehand, but you can visualize it as here's Shani, here's Triss. There's a whole bunch of stuff that happens over here. Um, that will determine your relationship with Shani. Same thing here. There's a whole bunch that determines your relationship with Triss. Although if you go down the Triss route, a lot of it is actually doesn't actually matter. I discovered later. Because I haven't read the books, but apparently Triss is the one in the books, and so they do kind of force it. But they force it in a way that I don't know that. So I make all these decisions, and then these two converge. And all of a sudden, Shadi and Triss both want this boy, and I have to choose between the two. And I'm going to bring this up again to see if there's something that might vaguely look like this. And I think the answer is no. So what it would look like is if you look at stepsisters here, if you had these paths, but then they converged afterwards, that is how I would map out this quest I'm talking about. But they really build it up, and you have all of these little choices beforehand, right? And so this feels like a major thing. And so while I was playing through this, I actually got to this point in a stream, because I'm streaming this game, and couldn't decide, so I put it off. And then I thought about it outside a game, and I agonized about it. And I finally, after a week, I think, made a decision, did it. I chose Triss for a whole bunch of reasons that won't make sense if you don't know the story. And then after I did that, somebody in chat said, oh, by the way, it doesn't matter because in Witcher 2, blah, 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 blah. And I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Trans is actually what my Mothman game do. Okay, so I'm actually glad you said that, right? Because when I brought these up, and I'm just gonna keep apologizing to you for the rest of class. I was trying to make this very general point of trying to make things not linear, but then there's always these exceptions to the rules, and there's ways that you can actually do it well. You said the last passage displays something different depending on your previous choices. Yeah, okay. So there it is. So that sounds very much like well, actually that's a little different than the Triss Shani example. So that would be another example of a way where something can look linear but still actually offer a lot of agency. In the Shani and Triss thing, and take this with a grain of salt because I'm going off of what some people said in chat, and I haven't gotten to Witcher 2 yet. But apparently it made absolutely no difference whatsoever in the long run. But it made a lot of difference in the moment, obviously. Okay, so what can make the difference between... So I started here by talking about this general idea of giving the player agency, doing it by having choices that matter. And obviously, a lot of this is general, as we found out when I showed you the linear lines and said, please don't do that. We also talked about these quick endings or also false choices, right? So I don't have the game on my computer and I was trying to show it, but you can. So I'm going to show you visually what it would look like, although within the story this is not going to make sense. So offer the rich merchant his remaining potatoes. Philip tries to barter his potatoes for the goose. I'm not going for good writing right here. And I'm going to say... No, I specifically copied and pasted because, as you may or may not remember, if you do not have the title exact, it will not go over to the box. And what I'm trying to show you here is a circular thing, right? So this would be a case in which you are also kind of forcing the player over. And so then this feels like a potentially false choice. Now, I'm not saying you can't have something circular, right? I'm pointing this out as if you end here, this is not something you want to do. However, if you have something here to offer real agency, and now there are other choices, uh, like, maybe he offers the potatoes, and then depending on how many potatoes, whatever, like if more come off of here, then it's fine. Um, Let me catch up with chat here. Heroes rise in a